Hi, guys, and welcome back to Model Behavior. It's Macy, and I'm so excited to catch up with you guys. It's currently Sunday. I just got home from spending the day with my friend Margot in Boulder. I had a fun weekend. One of my best friends, came into town last minute. And so I went up to Wyoming to see her because that's where we went to school. And so we went to a basketball game and we just caught up and it was so fun. And so then today I drove down to Boulder and Margot and I went to this like stretch class. It's at the same studio that we do Legree. But I told Margot, I was just like, I'm at like four Legree classes this week. Like I can't do like it's either cardio or we got to do something else. So we did this like recovery class and the woman who ran it is like a physical therapist. And so it was such a good class. Like it was active recovery. Like honestly, it was so good. So loved that class. And then we got lunch at this new spot, which I can't remember the name of it, but it was literally amazing. So it was honestly, and then we took her dog Goose for a walk. So it was honestly kind of the perfect Sunday. I just got home a little bit ago and I'm just thinking about what my week looks like. I have a lot to get done this week because then one of my other best friends, Sigrid, is flying in to visit and I'm so excited for her to be here. We're just going to go to Cycle Bar. We're probably going to go to a basketball game. We're going to go out and it's just going to be so much fun and I am so excited to see her. The last couple of times I've seen her, she lives in Boise, so I flew out there to see her. So I'm really excited to have her here in Fort Collins and it's just going to be a good time. So I have a couple questions, first of all. So last night, Lindsay and I, my friend that came in to town, were watching Love is Blind, the newest season, Love is Blind Minneapolis. I think it's like season 8. And we finally got all the way through. I'm not going to lie, like the first few episodes of Love is Blind are pretty painful. I don't know. To me, it's just like the awkward first stage of dating where you're like, so what's your favorite color? And it's like, I don't know if I need to be here for that. Seems like you guys need to work this out on your own. But I don't know. The people love it. And I live for the reveals. Like that is my favorite part of the show. And I think that's most people's favorite part of the show. So we finally got to some more of the reveals. I think it was like at the end of episode 4. And I'm trying to remember their names, but it was Dan and then Taylor. So okay, if you haven't watched this far into the show, like these are spoilers, so just like skip on ahead. But if you have watched, essentially, just a recap, essentially what happens is these two people, Dan and Taylor, Dan proposes to Taylor, Taylor says yes, and then the reveal happens. And she sees him and she is like not super stoked about how he looks. And I will say in the pods, he had some questionable fashion choices, but like she didn't know that. And I feel like that can be fixed. But it seemed like she wasn't super happy, but maybe I'm reading that wrong. I haven't watched more of the show yet, so maybe all will become clear as I keep watching. But then they like pull Taylor into a confessional like at the hotel the next day. And it was like very serious, dramatic music. And she was very serious. And she was just like, I realized that Daniel had followed me on Instagram a while ago. And Lindsay and I were like kind of started laughing. And then she was like, I have very specific things in my bio. Like, I love Taco Bell and I love Christmas. And I just feel like he might have been, basically she was insinuating that like she thought he was pretending to like the same things as her because he knew who she was before going into the pods. And so then Lindsay and I were just having a laugh because I'm like, okay, like she was like, Christmas is my thing. You can't also like Christmas. Like I'm the only person that likes Christmas. And it was just like, we were just giggling about it. So if you've watched more of the show, maybe I just need to watch more. But if you're at the part of the show where I'm at, I am highly confused. And I almost think like, is there something that the producers like cut out that like would have given context to why she was so upset? Like, I just feel like it's kind of a silly thing to be so upset about. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, I feel like I'm almost like missing something. I don't know. I don't really watch The Bachelor anymore, but back when I did, I always got the vibe that they were like cutting things out to try to like paint people in a certain light. I feel like they always do that. It's like reality TV, right? But sometimes I feel like the editing gets a little too extreme to the point where it's like, wait, I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. So maybe she was upset about the fact that he was pretending to like Taco Bell, even though he doesn't like Taco Bell, which I don't, whatever. Anyways, seemed pretty trivial to me, but I'm going to keep moving forward with the show because I think it's finally starting to get good. I think we finally pushed past the first few episodes. It was kind of a grind, but we did it. Anyways, I asked earlier this week on my Instagram if anybody had questions about my modeling journey, because it's something that I wanted to do an episode on for a bit, just talking about it. And I do feel like my experience with the modeling industry is pretty different than like the traditional route that people take. So I had some friends ask some questions on Instagram, so thank you to you guys who submitted questions. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey, and then I'm going to go in and answer some of the questions for you guys today. So I've talked about this in I think episode 1, but I have a contract with Wilhelmina Denver, which is an affiliate office of Wilhelmina. And I was signed, I want to say probably 2 years ago. It hasn't been that long, but it feels like I've just changed so much and I've learned so much in those 2 years. It's insane. So I think I was signed about 2 years ago. And I thought that it would just be good to share this because I think when I first started, I'm from a very small town. I think there's maybe one agency in my state and it's not a very big one. So I was just I don't have any family that's in modeling or in the industry at all. So I really had no idea what I was walking into. And so I thought it'd just be interesting if I shared, well, I don't know if it's interesting, but I thought it would be cool to just share a little bit about my journey. I feel like I get asked a lot by girls of how I got into it. So I felt like it'd be a fun thing to talk about. So I was signed a couple of years ago, and the story is kind of a long story. The reason why I even got signed is kind of, honestly, it's a crazy story. And my close friends know this. I don't think I'm going to get into this too much in this episode because it's kind of a long story. But I was attacked by a dog and I had a pretty severe bite to my face, and it was affecting the muscle. It's the orbicularis oris muscle, which is the muscle that surrounds your mouth that allows you to speak and enunciate and open and close your mouth. And so because of the complexity of the bite, the doctors didn't really know how my recovery was going to go, and they really didn't know how to treat me. It was just a very complex bite, and I really couldn't, I lost a little bit of my muscle with that bite, and so it made it really difficult for me to speak at all. So they ended up doing a type of skin graft on me, and I was in the hospital for a bit. And basically, and I'm very thankful for this. I haven't shared this yet on the podcast, but I'm a Christian and it's a very important part of my life. And I really do feel like prayer was so important during that time. But like I said, I feel like this story is something to talk about later because I do feel like it's an experience that really shaped who I am today. And it's the reason why I did get into modeling. So I can share that later. But I do feel like prayer really affected, I don't know, I feel like it really, really helped, especially in my healing process and just I don't know, my peace of mind and my optimism. So I ended up having basically what I can only describe as a miraculous recovery. They thought I was going to have, after I finished the initial few months of treatment, they thought I was going to have between 8 and 10 revision surgeries, and I ended up only having to have 2, which was incredible. And I did get one procedure done this fall that I feel like really helped with my scarring. And obviously this happened about, I want to say 2.5 years ago, 3.5 years ago. I think it was 2.5. It wasn't that long ago, but it also feels like it was a long time ago. Anyways, it happened around the time that I got signed to model, basically. So I did have a pretty, in my mind, what was a really noticeable scar on my upper lip. I miraculously was able to recover all of my muscle function. I even have a little bit of feeling back there now. So it was really I'm just saying it was such a God thing. I have no other explanation for it because with how bad the bite was, there really is no logical reason for how I should be able to look how I do today. But anyways, I'm getting too far into it. So after that, I had a friend who's a photographer. And where I was at getting treatment was in San Diego. So I was at UC San Diego Research Hospital, which is a level 1 trauma center. It's a very big research hospital. And so kind of to celebrate my last revision procedure, I hadn't gotten it yet. So you could still see my scar quite a bit, but even over the years, it's faded so much. And then when I got that last procedure done this fall, oh my gosh, you just would not even be able to tell. And I'm so grateful for that. But to celebrate like my last big like revision procedure, I got a photo shoot done on the beach. And the pictures turned out really good. And here's the thing, like I have never done anything like that before. Like I was currently in grad school. I was in maybe like my last year of my PhD, and I was really stressed about like, and this did end up making me graduate later than I would have, which was disappointing, but genuinely like it all worked out. Like it seriously, the way it worked out was just a miracle. But anyways, so I had never really done anything like that before, but I feel like a lot of people are like this. When you go through something traumatic, whether it's like a traumatic medical experience or an illness or like a bad breakup, it kind of pushes you. Well, you could go one of two ways. You could either, a lot of people are really affected by it and then they just kind of continue like the negative cycle without trying to work on themselves or, make something good out of it. Or a lot of people are like, okay, it kind of just like makes you realize what's really important in life, especially with that experience. And I just kind of had this mindset after that of like, how am I going to like level up from this? Like I have been given like this blessing, like of being like almost fully healed. And my other options for treatment were just not looking good. And so like, what could I do that is like stepping outside of my comfort zone? So my friend and I did this photo shoot on the beach, and the pictures turned out really good. Sorry, not to sound conceited, but I just had never seen myself in that light before, and I saw those pictures, and I was like, these eat. And so he had suggested, and then a couple of my other friends suggested, like, hey, you should submit this to a modeling agency, or like some modeling agencies. And at the time I was living in Wyoming, which being there yesterday with Lindsay was like so nostalgic because that's where we first became friends. We were both playing on the club tennis team there. But it really made me realize like, dang, like I don't know how all of this happened because it is such a small town. And so the next closest city is Denver, which is like a 2.5, sometimes 3-hour drive away, which is not far by like Montana standards where I'm from, but it still just feels far. It's kind of hard to explain. But anyways, so I submitted those pictures to a few agencies in Denver, and I ended up getting a couple calls back. And so I went to both of those agencies, and they wanted to meet me in person. I took digitals with them, which if you don't know what digitals are, they're pictures with you without any makeup, usually in like a form-fitting black outfit. Sometimes they have you do swim, and you pose, and then you do a couple runway walks, both in heels and barefoot, and they kind of just get to meet you in person and see like what your look is. And so I did both of those meetings, and after that, both of them offered me a contract. And obviously I had no idea what I was doing. Like I said, I have no family or even really any friends at the time in the entertainment business. And so I didn't really know what I was getting into. I didn't even know like what a mother agent was, which if you're familiar with modeling, like you would know what that means. If you're not, don't worry about it. It's not that important for the purpose of this episode. But I remember sending the contract to my friend Molly. And Molly has a PhD in materials science. If you're listening, I'm sorry if that's wrong, but she has her PhD in materials science and engineering. She was my roommate in college, and then she took the patent bar. And so in my mind, I'm like, she knows a little bit of law. She knows like patent law, but she did the best she could reading it over. And she was just like, yeah, I mean, I think this is good. The language sounds pretty specific, and she didn't like the other one because the language is too vague. So it just like that was enough to like make me comfort me because I read that contract very carefully. And so I ended up signing with Wilhelmina. And after that is when I didn't really start booking jobs until like 4 months after. So I booked my first big job like 4 months after I signed. And it was so exciting. I remember I was so nervous. It was a spread for a magazine. And I just remember walking on set and just being so nervous. And I knew that the production team could tell. But after that experience, I was like, I don't know. I just like when I go through things like that, like I love to learn and I love to be able to like get better at something. And so I think that's why I really enjoyed modeling so much and just learning about the industry, because this was something totally new that I had no knowledge of, and I had the opportunity to get better at it. And so as I booked more and more jobs, like I got more and more confident, and it's just, I didn't really realize how far I had come, but I was on set recently with a girl that, she's my friend. I had worked with her a few times before, And she literally was like asking me so many questions because she had a job in a couple of weeks. And she was asking me so many questions. And she was like, I just feel like you're like the resident expert. And I was like, wow, how did I get here? I don't know, because I don't think I am at all. And so that kind of leads me to my next point that I want to make about my journey is the different types of modeling, because I think that that's very important to understand. So you have to understand the market you're in. So since I got signed in Denver, which also I didn't mention, like I said, it all worked out. I ended up signing in Denver, not really knowing how I was going to make it work with living in Wyoming. And then I got offered a job at Colorado State. So I ended up taking the job at Colorado State, and then I was able to do both. My boss was super supportive of me doing both, which was incredible. She's incredible. And so that's kind of how that worked out. But I want to explain what the type of market that Denver is. So Denver, primarily, the brands that operate out of Denver are primarily outdoor companies. And so the reason why I got signed at the time, and I was signed as a curve model, which if you're not familiar with modeling, straight size modeling is usually anywhere between a 00 and a 4. In New York, it's usually like a 00 and a 2. But in Denver, it's like 00 and a 4. And then you're kind of in between. Sometimes between like size 4 and 6 is considered lifestyle. And then from 6 all the way up is considered curve. And might be thinking like, no, that's like normal size, but that's not, it's just how the industry is. So I was signed as a curve model, which actually was great because it opened up a lot of doors for me. And it really made it so that I was really versatile in the clients that I worked with or have been working with, but especially initially. And so in Denver, since there are a lot of outdoor markets, they really like girls that are between sizes like 6 and 10, because that's usually like the clientele. Like, I'm not saying like all body types can like, experience the outdoors and all of that. So I think that that's like something that the industry really needs to work on. But they really like size between like size 6 and 10 girls. And part of that is because that's what's considered like sample size. I'm doing air quotes. I know you can't see. Sample size for outdoor companies. I feel like I'm getting too into the weeds here. We really don't need to know this, but basically Denver is a lot of outdoor companies. And so the reason why I got offered contracts is because though my agents thought that I had the look that would fit well with those companies. Now, a lot of my friends from modeling that I've made since I signed modeled since they were young. And so a lot of them have had very different experiences from me. So generally the stories you hear about girls getting signed, and very similar to what my friends have experienced, is that they'll get scouted randomly. Like they'll be at like a grocery store and they'll get scouted by an agent, usually at around the age like 14. And then they'll sign with a major agency, and they're flying to New York, and then they're flying to LA and getting all these test shoots done, and they're doing like major runway shows. And then a lot of my friends usually would like take time off from modeling when they're in college, and then they are getting back into it after college. So that's like a more traditional route into modeling. But since I signed like in my mid-20s, I did not have that experience. So there's 3 main types of modeling. There's commercial, there's runway, and there's print? No, e-com. That's what I was thinking. I wrote it down somewhere. But I'm like a commercial / like e-com model. So e-commerce is when you like go to a website to buy clothes, and there's like a person modeling the clothes, and you click on the person, and it's like, oh, if you want to see a model in like a medium or a large, like click here. Or like, you would click on my picture and it would be like, Macy is a size 6 and she is 5'7" and she wears this. And so that was like my experience with modeling. I was not doing runway. I am not tall enough. Generally, they like runway girls to be at least 5'8", but especially in big markets like LA or New York, you need to be like at least 5'9". And so in Denver, that's not really what the market is like. But if you go to New York, it's a lot more like runway, like very, very thin, a lot more cutthroat. And LA, there's a little bit more diversity, but it's still like, it's more like swim, like, you still a lot of runway. So those are considered, New York and LA are considered the major markets in the US. And if you go overseas, obviously like Milan is a big market. And then like, I don't know, I have friends that are signed in like Stockholm, and then like in Korea and like things like that. So there's markets all over the place. But for me, I'm just here in Denver, and I love that I get to do the modeling jobs and also do my work as a scientist. So I feel like that's like the gist of how I got started and where I've gotten to. It's not like a crazy story. It's not like I was like discovered, because that's not generally the case for like when you're not a preteen. So, and I grew up in a very, very small town. So like, that's just not what my journey was. So someone asked, I'm going to just kind of pepper some questions in here. Someone asked, how does modeling fit into your life alongside science? So I kind of already explained that, but so since Denver is considered a non-major market, I'm not working every single day by any means. Like, I'm usually either going to in-person or virtual castings a couple times a week, and I'm usually working jobs maybe like 1 to 2 times a month. And that's very variable depending on the season. There's a few major brands that are in Denver, and they usually have fall and spring seasons, similar to like other brands, but because of that, like, they're needing modeling work at, different times of the year. So it's very like, I was going to say sinusoidal. That's like a type of plot. Sorry. It goes up and down. Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. Anyways. Oh, also, I was listening to some of the audio of this back of like from the previous episodes, and I noticed that I have a tendency to like laugh into the mic, and it makes like a really loud sound. So I apologize for that. I'm working on that. I'm working on keeping my face a steady distance away from the mic. Just so you know, I'm practicing, okay? I'm new. Anyways, so since I'm only working like a couple times a month and I have castings, usually a couple times a week, it's pretty manageable, especially semesters when I'm not teaching. My schedule is pretty flexible, and so I'll either work on the weekends or I'll just take time off in order to be able to go to these castings. But like I said, my boss is very supportive as long as I'm getting my work done and putting in my hours. I never have really had a problem with it, and it's a really nice mental break. Sometimes my job, it's just, and this is why I love it, it's a lot of analytical like problem solving, and I'm really having to like think on my toes, and it can be frustrating at times, but that's science. So I love it, but modeling is just such a nice break, I will say. It's so enjoyable to learn about the industry because I just really had no idea. Okay, let's see. Okay, someone asked about the first gig or first time realizing that you could actually model professionally. So I kind of explained that. It was like that beach photo shoot in San Diego. It was just for fun. And then I was like, wait, this was really fun. And I kind of had some encouragement from my friends as well. So that I kind of just randomly submitted. I hadn't really thought about it before, especially since I'm like 5'7". I'm not super tall, so I didn't really understand the way the industry worked. And I didn't really understand that there was actually like a niche for me, especially where I'm at in Denver with the like athletic brands. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. And then the first time that I want to talk though about the first time I walked onto a set and felt really confident, because I talked about like my first job where I was really nervous, but then, and I worked some jobs in between there, but then I remember I got booked for another really big magazine spread, and this one was like bigger than the one before. And so it was like, a really long shoot. We were on set for forever, and I had like this specific moment where, and I always do this, like when I get booked for a job, I like to do my research, and I feel like that's something that kind of can set you apart from other models, is when you really like research the brand before you go into castings, just so you kind of know like the types of shots they like to get for their product, and like how they like to highlight the product, and like the types of poses they're looking for, and also just kind of like their brand morals, I guess, their ethics. I think that has really allowed me to be really successful in these jobs. And I remember I walked into this magazine shoot, and they were trying to photograph this bag. I can't remember, I was shooting tons of looks this day, and they were trying to photograph this specific bag, and they could not figure out how to get it so that it would look good on set. And I kind of just started throwing some ideas out there. I kind of just started posing with the bag in certain ways, and because they were like, we don't know how to get you to pose so it looks natural, but you can still see the stitching detail. And so I brought like a few ideas to the table, and I kind of just started like, I don't know, like doing my thing, and they were like, oh wow, like it's really working out. And I think the reason why I was able to think on my feet like that is because I had like learned about this brand ahead of time. And then also something that I had learned is that, well, maybe we can talk about this later, but a lot of times like it's really just not about you at all. It's never about you on set. So it's really important to like show up as a professional and understand that you're kind of like the cog in this machine of getting like either this issue out or the season of close out, and it's not about you. So your job is to work like as efficiently as possible, but also it's nice as a model because you can kind of bring a little bit of chiller vibes to set, because a lot of times the creative directors and everybody that's on set are very kind of stressed about getting the right shot because time is money. And so doing whatever I can to help them get the shot as quickly as possible while also kind of being more personable, I think it's been really enjoyable for me because I've learned so much about the industry and so much about everybody's jobs on set. But also I think it has allowed me to be successful in the capacity that I am, obviously in the Denver market. Okay, someone asked about, do you ever deal with doubts or self-image insecurities? So I thought about this a lot, especially when I first started modeling. I at first I would have said no, I haven't dealt with any of that, but then I realized lately, I guess probably within the last year, that like there were some insecurities that were creeping up that I didn't even really realize that were there. So I feel like my answer to this question is going to be a lot different from someone who signed when they were very, very young, or maybe they signed in a major market. Sorry, there's someone at my door. I ordered a new workout set, and I think that's what it is, so I'm very excited. Hold, please. Okay, I'm back. False alarm. That was not my set. I'm so excited to get it. Oh my gosh. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, yes. Do you ever deal with doubts or self-image insecurities? So I think with my friends that got signed very young, they dealt with self-image insecurities a lot. And generally, you find that more in like more competitive markets, and definitely more when you're a straight size model, because there's a lot more pressure to remain sample size for that demographic, which is like 0 to 2. And especially when you get signed young, your body changes a lot as you get older. Like you fill out a little bit more, you get more curves, and that's just like a natural progression. But it can be very difficult. I've had friends that have told me it was very difficult to make the transition from, for example, being like a size 0-2 when you're 17 to all of a sudden you're 22 and you're a size 8. And it might not seem like that big of a deal to most people, but the industry is, especially in that market, is very, very cutthroat in that way. For me, I think I was pretty lucky because I got signed to a really good agency with really good agents, and I think that they're very focused on health. And so like they just want you to be healthy. And I also think as being like, make sure you're eating enough and all of that. And also I think that getting signed as a curve model helped me too, because there's a little bit less of a microscope on your measurements. With my division, I never really struggled with that when it came to like, I don't know, like my agents or anything like that. I will say I have lost a job before for my measurements changing, and I actually lost some weight. And because I wasn't the same size, same measurements anymore, they ended up not asking me back and hiring someone else, which I was sad, but I also was like, you know what? I'm confident with myself. I think it'll be fine. So I've definitely lost jobs because of that, but that doesn't bother me personally. I think that it's just, none of it is personal. It's just a business, and they're just trying to make the best product that they can. So I don't really take that personally. Now, if I had signed when I was young, I feel like my answer of self-image, self-doubt would have been very different, because I think when you're young, you're so much more impressionable, and I think that there are a lot of people in the industry that prey upon that naivete. And so I think that it was a really good thing that I didn't get signed until I was older, because I think I had the maturity to be able to advocate for myself and, not take things personally. However, it's a big change when you go from being in the lab, for example, to all of a sudden being put in a room at a casting with like 50 other 50 of like the most beautiful girls you've ever seen in your life. But I think that I just have to be really intentional about being like, there is beauty in everybody, and their beauty does not mean that I have a lack of beauty. And I think that that has been a really good exercise for me, and like celebrating other people's wins. I've always been like that as a friend, but I really think with modeling, you have to be a lot more intentional about being like, their success does not take anything away from me. And so it's been a good exercise in that. And I think because of that, especially now, I don't struggle with self-doubt or image. And I think part of it also is that this is not my main stream of income. I have my career as a scientist. And so I think that balance really helps me keep a lot of perspective. Okay. So someone asked, how important is social media now? I think this is a really good question. And this is from my friend, and we've talked about it before. So I think this is a good question to discuss, though, because I really feel like social media has absolutely changed the game when it comes to modeling. I think it's part of the reason why I'm able to model, because brands used to promote, there's kind of two types of content that people like to consume. They like to consume aspirational content, and they like to consume relatable content. And so if you think about especially like models, or not even just models, but people like public figures that you look up to, before the age of social media, it was pretty much all aspirational content. Like you would look in magazines and you would see like Victoria's Secret models that were 6 feet tall and a size 00, and that would be aspirational. Like you're like, wow, like I don't have a lot in common with this person, but I'm fascinated because of it. But since the age of social media and the rise of influencers and content creation, the public has really gravitated towards more relatable content. Aspirational content still definitely does well, but especially when it comes to things like outdoors and relatability, I think brands recognize that. And so they want to hire models that people could see themselves in. And so along those same lines, I think that social media is a very powerful tool, especially if you're trying to get into modeling, because a lot of times casting directors anymore won't look at your portfolio. They'll just look at your Instagram. And so when I signed, we actually had to sign a social media writer as part of our contract, and we received training and coaching on our social media image, which I think is another great thing that my agency offered. They offered so many workshops and trainings, and they still do, and they're fantastic. But the social media aspect, I think, is really interesting because, we do receive coaching on that because it is kind of a portfolio. And so I think it makes it a lot more accessible for everyday people to get into modeling. Like you don't have to just get discovered in a grocery store anymore, although that still happens a lot. You can really use social media as a tool and really leverage it to your benefit. So, okay, last question. How has modeling shaped who you are today? So I think that in addition to it being very fun, I think it was also on the heels of like a very powerful life event for me. But I do feel like modeling has really made me, first of all, I have gotten to meet and work with some of like the most amazing people and like the most inspiring people. And I've made so many great friends through it that I never would have made. And so I'm really grateful for that, because I feel like just expanding my circle like that, and just the juxtaposition of the modeling industry and my friends there compared to friends I have through research and work and science it's really cool, because I feel like I learn a lot from all of my friends, and they all just bring such unique perspectives. But I also think modeling has really forced me to look inward and think about my core values and what's most important to me and where I want to be at in life, because I do think it can be easy to get very caught up in the image of things and always be worried about being seen with the right people and putting off like this perfect image. And so I think that I've had to become very intentional about reminding myself who I am and like my core values and where I came from and what's most important to me. And so this fall, I took like an extended social media break because my head was just like not in the right place. And it was so good for me, because I think that, and I highly recommend it if you're feeling icky about social media, just deactivating all your accounts and just taking a decent break, because I feel like I'm able to identify more easily when I'm kind of heading down that road of comparison or trying to like hide behind an image. So I do think being confronted with that in like a very real way through modeling has allowed me to be more aware of my tendencies and just continually remind myself what's most important. So with all that being said, I think that's all I have for you today. I have not said this before, but you can stream Model Behavior on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. I'm also on Instagram at Model Behavior Pod, and then my own Instagram is Macy_Kara. I feel like I need to start plugging all of those things, but thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye.